You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's intelligent C optimization and transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage. Welcome to the Modern Mainframe. I'm Matt Dallaire. Looking at the mainframe landscape over the past several years, it's clear that innovation on the platform is growing, with organizations looking to respond to market demands with more applications and services delivered faster than ever before. It's no surprise then that the use of DevOps in mainframe development is also growing. So with a new year upon us, we wanted to gather a panel of mainframe DevOps experts and get their predictions for the coming year. Joining me today are BMC lead product managers Spencer Hallman and Mark Schettenhelm, and DevOps architect and evangelist Tony Anter. Spencer, Mark, Tony, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, let's get out the modern mainframe crystal ball and jump right into the predictions. Spencer, what is your number one prediction for mainframe DevOps in 2023?
Yeah, so in 2023, I think you're going to start to see a significant growth in artificial intelligence and machine learning as key components in measuring DevOps performance metrics. And so if you think about the two separately, machine learning can do a very good job of understanding your DevOps pipelines and your DevOps processes. It can understand what normal looks like. And if you start to veer out of normal, it can notify you of that. And that's where artificial intelligence, I believe, can come in. And artificial intelligence then can tell you how to react to what's happening in your DevOps pipeline. So maybe if tests are failing at a rate that pushes you out of normal and machine learning notifies you of that, artificial intelligence can come in and tell you that, hey, you need to put more testing in. You need to add, tests for module XYZ. And so that's what I really think that, you're going to start to see is first of all, the machine learning telling you that there's a problem, and then the artificial intelligence coming in and telling you how to react to that problem.
Yeah, and I think with that, Spencer, you're going to see a lot of the natural place this will lead to is autonomics, where you're going to have systems that not only understand what's going on, but start having the ability to automatically react to some of that input in the environment. Oh, I have a system down. I need to restart it. Oh, this system is throwing errors. Maybe I need to kill that and bring it back up, or I need to roll that change back. I think there's a lot of data out there in the ether that it's only natural to take some of these AI ML techniques and start parsing that data to see where you can actually start letting the system automatically react, so that then things like your uptime and capabilities like that start getting higher and higher.
So, Tony, this is Mark. It's taking metrics from being actionable, because that's what we always want, is something where it's not just, well, here's some bad news, but something I can do something about it. But you're saying it's taking it from actionable to actually acting on it automatically. And that gets into things like SRE. But so that's where using the metrics to actually drive processes rather than just metrics that you might look at and think about.
Right. I mean, the data is there and the capability is there. So it's only natural that I think eventually these two things are going to come together.
Yeah, and I don't see, it's not out of the realm of possibility, maybe not in 2023, but in the near future of machines reacting to failure, saying, you know what, you need more tests here. So, maybe after something is deployed, it sees that it has failed and it consistently fails. And so it automatically creates the test and inserts that into your DevOps pipeline.
Right. So it's really this AI that you mentioned is really automating the analysis or looking at it, rather than depending on a human saying, oh, we need more test cases, having it go through there and suggest them. Now, maybe we're not at the point where it creates them yet, but what you're seeing is more automation of the analysis of these metrics so that you can put them into action.
I agree with you 100%, Mark. And I think even 2023, you could see artificial intelligence saying, yeah, hey, you know what, module XYZ is failing. You need more tests, and it needs to exercise, this specific section of the code.
That's possible.
Let's just hope no one calls it Skynet.
Let's try to steer away from that and make these happy metrics.
Happy metrics.
Happy metrics, yeah. And they should be. Metrics should be ways to make things better for the developers. And I think having this automation that you speak of really keeps some of the drudgery away from it and really focuses people on working and not staring at metrics and trying to figure them out.
Yeah, makes the day-to-day tasks more easier, makes the day-to-day tasks more acceptable so that then your elite operations guys aren't worrying about the nitty-gritty and they're really taking care of how to make this system truly hardened, how to make this system true, how to keep your uptime in that excellent category.
Right, focusing on that and acting and setting up actions
Right.
based on these recommendations.
Well, based on that prediction Spencer gave, are there any particular metrics that stand out as essential for organizations to measure for mainframe DevOps?
I mean, I'll always go back to the DORA 4. I know it that's been around forever, so I don't know if that's a new prediction, but I think the DORA 4 give you the best insights. And there's always exceptions to that rule, but they give you the best insights into how you're doing and what you're doing. If we're talking operations and the ability to start doing AI and ML, then you're going to look more on some of the operational capabilities. And, that's more low level data versus KPIs.
And I like that because there's 4 DORA metrics, and I see people really focusing on like mean time to recovery. They're just looking at if it fails, I got to go fix, which is fine. But I think there's more to it that we really need to look at things like change failure rate. That's a way to improve your process, or trying to look at, deployment frequency. That is delivering satisfaction to your users faster. Broadening out from just looking at something like mean time to recovery to giving a little bit more into those other metrics.
There's some ones like defect escape rate that measure how many defects are actually getting through your testing. And I think that goes to what Spencer was talking about, which is how effective is my testing? The DORA 4, I think, are the base of the pyramid, but there are other things that you could be measuring too to really enhance your knowledge and understanding of what's going on.
One of my favorites of those DORA 4 metrics is the lead time for changes. Because I always sort of look at that as the red tape KPI, that that is the time that takes place after the developer has finished doing the work that he's going to do. So he promotes it, or he checks it back in, and then it goes through whatever automation or testing that it has to go through before it gets deployed to production. But in that time, like, what is taking place? That's where I think, the organization could focus on looking at that, the activities that take place. Is it all automated, or is there manual intervention that has to take place? We've talked to some customers where during that lead time for changes, it's actual people going out there and manually testing the code. I remember a customer telling me that we were showing him it was taking 21 days was his lead time for change. And he's like, he had no idea, although his developers were telling him it took a long time because of the manual testing. And he's like, finally, you are showing me in black and white what takes place after the developers finish developing the code. And sometimes the developers get blamed for that time too, even though they might not have a role in that, but they get blamed because they were asked to do something and they do it, and they do it relatively quickly. But then, the red tape of the organization takes over and slows everything down.
Right.
Well, Tony and Mark recently collaborated with IDC on a BMC-sponsored DevOps survey, and it found that 82% of organizations prioritize using the same application development tools across distributed and mainframe teams. So based on that, Tony, what's a prediction you might have for 2023?
I think in 2023, you're going to see a breakdown of the silos across core systems and distributed systems, and I think DevOps is going to lead that charge. Up to this point, those tool sets and those things have been done in a silo. The distributed world had their process, their methodology, their tools, and you're going to see this. And then the mainframe had their own set of processes and tools, et cetera. DevOps has basically taken that, and so you can use the same tools for both. Now I think you're going to see that those walls, those silos are going to come down, and you're going to see pipelines that are able to span across both sets of changes, both platforms, and deploy things en masse. If you're talking about a cloud change, that cloud change is probably reaching back and pulling data from a core system on a mainframe or wherever. And I think you're going to see now that in order to push that change, you really have to make changes to both platforms. And you're going to see pipelines that span across that, as well as you're going to see this idea of ruthless automation of every task and every capability. And I think with that automation, everything that isn't automated is going to start becoming automated. So I think in 2023, you're going to see that process start to happen. I think you're going to see a lot of these silos evaporate, and you're going to see teams and or automation capabilities that span across platforms and across capabilities to do one single thing.
Right. And well, Tony, you talk about at that far end of that spectrum of the advancements. What I see in 2023 is those that have made some steps in this way in bridging things and adopting similar IDEs or SCM, and certainly the adoption of pipelines and unified deploy. It's spreading into those that haven't just kind of waded into it, will start using it more often.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the foundation. And as more and more people start adopting those similar capabilities across, then you're going to the point you're making, then you're eventually going to see that these pipelines will merge into a sort of a hybrid automated everything.
Right. It's the success from those early adopters that's already set. It's already the word has been spread. So now we'll see more and more people adopting that.
Right. I mean, end of the day, the mainframe, core systems, cloud, web, mobile, these will all just become implementation details, right? A business unit change is a business unit change. I want to sell widgets in a certain way at a certain price, and the platforms that those capabilities get pushed to will start becoming irrelevant. And you're going to see basically a set of automation that basically determines what's the best spot for this change and where does it go. And it will have all the pieces of that automated across the board. We've been saying for a while now that the mainframe is just another system, just another platform. And this will ultimately be the outcome of that, of the mainframe now becoming a first-class citizen in this process and just being another platform.
Spencer, what do you think organizations have to gain from prioritizing using similar tools for both mainframe and distributed development?
I think when you use similar tools, it helps you move your resources around the organization to attack what's most important to the organization. So if everyone's using the same tools, it's not like you're going to take, somebody from one team that's using one tool and put them on another team that's using another tool. And when they get to that team, then they're going to have to spend time to learn that new tool. But if everyone's using the same tool, so if they're all using, VS Code to, write their code, they don't have to learn how to use VS Code. They already know how to use it. They probably learned how to use it in college. And then it just comes down to what they're doing. Even taking, mainframe people and pushing them to the distributed, or taking distributed people and moving them to the mainframe to write COBOL code. If you're a computer science major, you learn, the basic structure of programming languages. You understand how a loop works. You understand assignment. And then once you get into the different languages, it's really just a matter of dialect. I mean, I was a computer science major, and I find it relatively easy to pick up new languages. It's just learning how the language works. That common tool set, though, everybody understands how the tools work. And when there's a problem, they all know how to jump in and fix it. They don't have to go get Joe or Cindy to look at, why, because they might be the SME on that tool or the only one that knows how to use that tool. And if they're the only one that knows how to use that tool, if they leave the organization or get hit by a bus tomorrow, then the organization might be in trouble. So standardizing on a tool set is critical and key for an organization.
It only makes sense.
And it also helps. I've spoken in the past with some college professors who say the same thing, that it's just a matter of the language, not the logic behind it. It also helps with recruiting new talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People today don't want to go backwards. They want to go forwards, and they want to use the cool things that they know and that are comfortable to them. And this only enhances your ability to draw in new people if they're familiar with the capabilities that you have.
Okay, Mark, I'll pass the crystal ball over to you. Can you give us a prediction for 2023?
Sure. I think the first one that comes to mind is that it's about Git. Git-centric enterprise source code management strategy, it will continue to grow. It's been something that's been a goal for the last few years where people say, I would like to have everything in one place. Sort of what we were talking about earlier. It's this idea of bridging things. So having their source in Git, and I think we're going to see more and more organizations going there. However, my other prediction on that is that organizations might look at Git as just Git by itself. But in mainframe development, I guess all development, there's really three parts to it, and what I call the three-legged stool that you need for stability. You have your source code management, so that's your code editing and checking it out and keeping track of it. Then you have your build, and then your deploy. And what I see going wrong at some sites is if they only think of one leg of that stool, just the Git, and then they ignore the build and the deploy, they will have a lot of problems with the strategy. So they'll have to look at all three of those, and you can go to Git, but make sure you have a solid solution for build and your deploy. So I see more organizations doing it and organizations having trouble with it.
And I think going towards Git too, right? If the organization goes towards it, this is what people are learning in college today and coming out of college with the knowledge of. They don't have to learn some mainframe SCM that was developed in 1980 and never updated since. They know how to, check code out of Git. They know how to check code back in. They know how to promote it. They know how to use that. So you don't have to spend the time onboarding them to some SCM that they might not ever want to use. And this will make the company an attractive place for these people.
I think it goes back to the point you were making a second ago, Spencer, about using common tools, right?
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
as more people retire, and 2023 will see another wave of retirements, as will the next few years. As more and more people retire, the new blood that comes in is going to want to make this familiar. They're going to want to use those same tools that they're used to, and that's Git. Git is what, 90+%, 95, 98% market share on the distributed side source code management.
Yeah, and I think at the same time, though, you have to be careful, right? Like if you decide we're going to be Git and we're going to be Git tomorrow, there may be some people in your organization say, you know what, I have no desire to learn Git, right? They're basically the SMEs for your applications. They're probably in their, late 50s, early 60s, and they may just say, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to call it a career.
Right.
I'm going to go over to this organization over there.
And that's maybe to build on sort of what I was saying earlier, is that this move to Git, if it's a one day everything goes into Git, that can have problems. So it should be more of an application by application, working your way into it first, because there might be some that's like, it's just not worth it at this point to move it into Git. A phased approach, and don't ignore that you still need to do the build and deploy on the mainframe, and you have to have a solid solution for that and a solid solution that works with Git.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is not going to be easy. And when I say it doesn't mean it's impossible, nor am I trying to dissuade somebody, but this isn't like Michael Scott in The Office screaming, I declare bankruptcy. This isn't, you can't just say, I'm going to go to Git and then everything works out. You have code bases that are massive, that have not been refactored, that are optimized for the current source code management systems that they're in, that one built in 1980 that's waterfall. There's going to take some work and some thought and some architecting, to Mark's point about how you move that code into Git and how Git is going to work. One of the great things about Git is it's very flexible and sort of meets you where you're at with how you want to work. One of the bad things about Git is it's very flexible and it meets you how you want to work, right? So you have to be disciplined and think this through. So I think a lot of people are talking about moving to Git, and I think they will move to Git. I think people will see that this is the direction to go. But it's not just going to be a flip a switch and all of a sudden I'm in Git and it's rainbows and unicorns and chocolate fountains and, Willy Wonka's factory.
So speaking of this, the IDC survey I mentioned earlier showed that 88% of those surveyed plan to move all of their mainframe source code, or at least their strategic source code, to Git within the next 3 years. But so far, only 5.1% have done so. Do you think that the planning could be a reason for that? Do you think that we'll see a greater move in the coming year?
Yes. Yeah, I think we will see a greater move, but I think the planning and the difficulty of this is why you only see 5.1%. And I'm not even sure the state of the 5.1% that have moved. Right. I think that there's a lot of planning and foresight that needs to go into this. And I do think that you're going to see an uptick in this. And I think this is absolutely a correct prediction.
So there's already been a trend here in the predictions regarding automation. And we've already touched on freeing up developer time by automating repetitive tasks. And we've discovered that automation really is a priority for organizations. A Forrester consulting study on Mainframe DevOps found that 53% of respondents prioritize automation of repetitive tasks to free up time for developers to innovate. Mark, is this the year that we really start to see some big gains in automation?
I really hope so. I think everything is in place for that. I think people get it. So this would maybe be my hopeful prediction, that they really, I know that they'll get gains. What I don't know is how much that movement will be to automation. How much will they take seriously that investment needed to get the payoff of the big gains?
I think at some point they have to. I mean, it's going to become strategic, right? I mean, if you're not doing it and your competitor is probably putting out code or new feature and functionality into the marketplace at a much quicker pace than you are. You go back to those DORA 4 metrics and it'll show up right there. If you could compare the two organizations side by side, the one that has, the automation in play is going to see, much better metrics, where the company that doesn't have the automation in play is not.
It's the trends too. It's the retiring workforce, getting new people in, and then that time to market, trying to speed up things. That's going to force them. The only way they can respond to that is by investing in automation.
And a lot of these tasks too that you're automating are tasks that people don't want to do, right? Testing, for example, I mean, I was a developer. Testing was the thing I hated the most. Even in college, it's like, oh, testing. The only reason you tested was, so you got a higher grade, really. But it's just these processes, are ripe for automation. And people don't want to do them. And so you're not going to go off the street and hire someone to do them. You may, but you could put that money someplace else.
In the 2022 BMC Mainframe survey, security was a top priority, as it has been for the past several years. Tony, do you have any predictions regarding DevSecOps over the coming year?
Yeah, I think that you're going to see DevSecOps play an increasing role in mainframe DevOps pipelines. What I've seen as a trend in DevOps, so DevOps has been there, DevSecOps, the inclusion of security into your pipelines has been something that's there in the distributed side. for a while. So that this isn't some kind of revolutionary new prediction. But if you're talking about the mainframe platform, the same process that DevOps followed on the distributed side is now being played out on the mainframe side. And I think mainframe teams, so they've got, everyone's either doing or trying to do or is in the middle of doing DevOps on the mainframe and implementing their changes. Now they're starting to recognize that a part of that needs to be security scanning, DAST and SAST scanning. That needs to be built into your pipeline and part of your automation. So just like the hallmark of the mainframe is its, reliability and security. Well, I think over this last little bit, people, just like when I started martial arts again, I figured out I wasn't as tough as I thought I was. Well, I think mainframe guys are starting to figure out the mainframe isn't as secure as they thought it was. And you still need some of those security apparatus and capabilities built in. And if you're going to automate, then you need to automate everything. And I think DevSecOps is going to be a topic this year. You're going to see more and more and more push to do things like DAST and SAST and some of those automated security capabilities that are built into the distributed pipelines.
Yeah, organizations can incur a lot of bad news, but if that bad news is the result of a security lapse, that might be something that you can't overcome. And so nobody wants to be on the front page because their application had a hole in it that let social security numbers and usernames and passwords all flow out because anybody that wanted to take them, they could take them. And the CIO doesn't want to be on the front page. The president doesn't want to be on the front page. Security is something that they can't invest in enough of. If you think back to Log4j, I can remember being on some customer calls. They wanted to know what our exposure was to Log4j because they were going through all of their code and identifying where they had Log4j, and they demanded all their vendors come to a conference call and tell them what their exposure through their tools was for that. So security is critical in the future.
Yeah, I mean, ask yourself, or ask anyone who was one of those big hacks or big issues that happened over the last few years, if they had a way to proactively look for and scan those vulnerabilities, would they have bought into it? I guarantee you 100% would say yes.
If they could have spent a fraction of what they had to spend in class action lawsuits to fix the security thing, they would have wrote that check 10 times over.
Yeah, absolutely. What's that old saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yep.
Right.
But one of the areas that we never really thought much about, and it's good we're starting to think about it more, is looking for vulnerabilities in the code itself, right? And I know there's some partners that we work with that actually scan the COBOL code and looking for vulnerabilities in the code itself. And I know there's plenty of companies out there that do that for Java and Node.js or whatever the distributed code is. But it's something that I don't think we focus enough on the mainframe. And, there are companies out there now that are doing that. And I think that's a good thing.
Okay, so I have an open question to the group. Whoever would like to answer can go ahead. What mainframe DevOps processes do you see evolving over the coming year?
I see more of a move to site reliability engineering, SRE. And the mainframe's been very good, excellent with detecting issues. It's staying up. First of all, not having issues. And when you do, keeping up. But I still think we could use some more techniques to get better, particularly in the mean time to resolution, to speed up that as soon as that issue is detected, to determine who it goes to and getting that person working on it. We're not done there. There's still things we can do, and I think a lot of automation can be used to speed that process.
And I think that's also going to lead into platform engineering. So I think you have DevOps, you have tools that are being set up and capabilities and things are being centralized into a set of tools. Ultimately, I think that's going to lead to a move towards platform engineering, which is the next iteration of all this, the next iteration of DevOps and SRE. And what that is, it's basically productizing your offering. So now I have a DevOps platform and I have application teams. Those application teams should be able to self-service. You shouldn't need 50 people to go in, and every pipeline is a snowflake that gets, hand carved by an artisan, in a mountain chalet in Italy. It should be a reusable capability that an application team can go in and self-service, pick what they need, get all that set up and automated to create that, and just move forward. I think you're going to see that push forward as well. This idea of turning these capabilities into more of a platform engineering offering.
Yeah, the one thing I'll throw out there too, and you guys can shoot me down if you want, but I think we're really mature. The mainframe is really mature at dev or development, right? And it's really mature at ops. They figured those two components out decades ago, and they do them really well. I think they're really immature at DevOps, right? Bringing the two together. And sometimes they're at loggerheads with each other. And some companies have figured it out, right? And those are the companies that are going fast and putting code out there much quicker than other companies. And I think it's going to be incumbent on the companies that haven't figured it out to figure that out in the coming year or coming years. Because if they don't, they're going to get left behind by their competitors.
Yeah, Spencer, I think that was very insightful. And I think you're right that mainframe is very good at ops. Development, I think we could use a lot more improvement as far as automation, but that comes from what you're talking about as DevOps. And that's where we need a lot of work, is to get those two sides together and the handoffs and the automation.
Yeah, I was looking at more like, if I have a problem, a really, really difficult problem that has to get solved by some mainframe team, if I give that to them, they'll figure out a really elegant solution. But getting that to production after they create the solution is sometimes where, the process, I think, falls down.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a great point too, Spencer.
Well, I think everybody made some great points. We covered some great ground. So it's probably a good spot to put away the crystal ball, turn on the lights, blow out the candles, play some heart music, and return to the regular world.
I especially like the heart music part.
Yes, I wish I had it on hand. Spencer, Mark, Tony, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you,
Thanks
Matt.
for hosting us, Matt.
And thanks to everybody listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Modern Mainframe. You're listening to the Modern Mainframe, BMC's Intelligent C Optimization and Transformation podcast, covering the latest trends and issues in the mainframe and how BMC AMI solutions can help you make change your competitive advantage.